So we all remember Monster Hunter Wilds, right? One of the most successful, if not the, I think it actually is the most successful game so far this year in terms of copies sold. Sold well over, I think, 10 million copies over. Like, it's crazy successful. It's done very, very, very well. However, even going back to the initial launch, it was pretty rough in terms of optimization. It didn't look particularly good. I remember us watching a Digital Foundry snippet talking about the performance of Monster Hunter Wilds, and they said it was like really, really, really bad. There were also concerns and frustrations over endgame content, long-term replayability, things like that. And now it seems to have fully caught up with them. You know, when we were first having those conversations at launch, people are playing the game from the start. So they're not concerned with endgame. And if your critique of the game is the endgame, they're not there, so they don't really care. And they'll mass downvote your videos and throw fits if you bring it up. But now I think people have started to hit the wall with endgame content for Monster Hunter, and they're starting to reevaluate the package that was delivered to them, and they're finding it haunting. Okay, so what is happening right now? Well, if you go to Monster Hunter Wilds, you can see they are overwhelmingly negative in recent reviews. Overall reviews are now stuck at mixed. They, I believe, were floating in mixed for a while, actually. A lot of people were dissatisfied with the performance, and that's been a common thread. But, I mean, as you can see here, informational. Monster Hunter Wilds has peaked at 1.384 million concurrent players on March 1st. And I believe, again, they said they sold like 10 million copies. But if you go through these reviews, they say that it's not booting. They're bringing up worst optimization, game crashes every time I try to use the blacksmith. And the thing is, these are not people who have played a little bit of the game. Like, these are not people who played 10 minutes like the Mind's Eye reviews and were like, it's broken. 287 hours on record. What's also kind of hilarious is this review, 265 hours at the time of review. After they left this negative review, not recommended, they put in another 22 hours of gameplay. Another 22. I hate it. Let me play it for another day. Like nonstop. But this is what we see with a lot of these, you know, 157 hours. And in this case, you know, this is a very fair complaint. You know, he's saying the game will no longer boot up. That's a problem. Obviously, he overcame that because he put another 22 hours in. It was posted May 28th, and then after that, it put another 22 hours. So they fixed whatever his problem was, seemingly. But you see another 157 hours discussing optimization. Like, that's, they got into pretty deep into the end game, and they are, to say the least. And now they're posting a negative review about it, leaving this negative review until Capcom fixes their shit. This game itself is amazing, but I don't recommend buying it on PC at the moment. 74 hours. 34, okay, reasonable. This game has less content than Supermarket Simulator free demo. You do hit a wall if you're not interested in grinding the, I forget what they call them. There's a certain type of weapon. Oh, I can't remember what they're called. But if you're not interested in grinding that stuff, then yeah, there's not a ton for you to do in the end game. That's like the whole thing, you know. Not recommended. 344 hours. Capcom has released another unfinished mess of a game, this time above MSRP, and obviously withheld finished content to pad their release schedule. I have a few hours. Yep. Many of which are falling asleep with the game on or AFK hanging out with my wife, and I will likely keep up with events, but won't be grinding this like I did with older titles. I would advise you wait until they fix things to purchase. There are other games and companies more deserving of your time and money. 35 hours on Monster Hunter Wilds, way too short, too easy, too streamlined, too expensive, and runs like trash. Honestly, I do feel it's too short. I also felt it was too easy. You can go back and check my review. I said the same thing. Too streamlined. I'm not sure if I'd say that, but I think because I think it's too easy, it perhaps feels too streamlined because you don't have to use a lot of the systems. And then too expensive. I mean, the fact that it runs like trash, which it does, even still, it doesn't run well, perhaps, you know, adds to the feeling it's too expensive. So this, I think in general, is probably a pretty fair review. Gameplay is absolutely great, but the kid whose story we follow is not good at all. Yeah, that was one of the weirdest things, is like their obsession with trying to make that kid likable. Amazing game. I had fun at 30 FPS. Can only imagine how fun it would be at 60. What a champ. What a champ going through that. Not much commitment to attacks in this one, all sorts of stuff. But they have 230,000 reviews. Lots of reviews. And across all of them, they are sitting, even now, recent ones of the 9,900 recent reviews in the last month, they are overwhelmingly negative, with only 17% of them positive. And of course, from the start of the game's launch, they are at 59% positive. Woof. But here's the question. Does any of this matter? Because they still sold millions upon millions upon millions of copies. This was one of the worst technical launches of a AAA game I think Capcom has ever had. Certainly, I think it's one of the worst technical launches, besides Mind's Eye, of the year. But they still sold 10 million copies. Like, the game's optimization was widely panned, across both console and PC. Monster Hunter Wilds. And yeah, I mean, you can see some of this stuff that they discuss. Some people have, higher tolerance for this stuff, and that's fine. But there are some things where, like, when you boot the game, they ask you to turn on frame generation, which is one of the biggest, girthiest red flags ever. If a game runs so poorly, when you boot it, they're asking you to turn on frame generation to just get fake frames to make it playable. That's a big problem. That's a big problem. Not to mention that even if you do that, even if you turn on DLSS, quality mode, and you're running on a 4090 and stuff, the game still looks like it's been smeared in Vaseline. Like, look at this. This is what he's pointing out.
I could see that the textures in the game were confusingly poor. So many shots had textures like this that were just bafflingly low resolution. I really think this almost looks PS3 level here. And some of the textures, like this character's coat, even though it's directly in front of the camera, look straight up wrong. I presume the coat here is supposed to be white color, but the poorly configured texture compression maybe has made it into a multicolored one with obvious mosaic artifacting. When I finally got character control after the long-winded intro, I was greeted by big stutters each and every time I turned the camera while using the RTX 4060 at the default high settings at 1440p DLSS balance mode. Along with the stutters, it is quite easy to see how textures were taking a while to load in after each camera turn. So it looked bad and ran bad on the default high settings with no ray tracing on. As a reminder, these are the settings that the game defaulted to after detecting my hardware. Having tested PC games for so long, I know such strange frame time behavior when turning the camera can often have to do with aspects of streaming things into VRAM. Sometimes textures. With that learned experience in mind, I went into the menu to tweak things down when I saw another thing which gave me pause again. The game's high textures, which look poor as I just showed, are definitely not the highest at least. The highest require a separate DLC download that will come out when the game is released on release day. So at least there is a potentially better visual experience.
I also tried those. They don't look great. I just think in general, the game does not look anywhere near as good as it should to be running as poorly as it does. If it were photorealistic, but it ran kind of rough, okay, at least you can understand it. Like, it doesn't look particularly great and it runs like ass, okay? And now, to be fair, this is as of 3 months ago. They still have not made major improvements. I mean, hence the overwhelmingly negative reviews. I mean, look at this. This is on medium textures. This should not qualify as medium texture quality in any AAA game in 2025. Are you kidding me? And this is something we brought up back when the game launched, and we had videos getting mass downvoted because people are like, no, how dare you talk out against almighty Monster Hunter? But now it feels like the community more generally is starting to see, no, it's fair. It's not great. It's really, really not great. And so the viewer or the player counts have started to plummet. And now players are actually moving back to Monster Hunter World. Monster Hunter World now on Steam is realizing higher concurrent player counts than Wilds. People are actually going back to it. Now, discussions over content volume, that happens with every single game. People get to the end game and then they start feeling frustrated by it. It's why it's funny to read some of these reviews and it's like, there's no content. Meanwhile, they have 350 hours in the game and it's like, what? That's like a lot of content, But what happens is that people will go back to a Monster Hunter Wilds, which has had years and years and years of DLC and expansions even. They're like, yeah, see, this has so much more. This is a better game. And it's like, it has more because it's been supported for years and years. I I do still think Monster Hunter Wilds was lacking on overall content. I think it was too easy and it ran like ass. And, you know, I stand by all of that. I still think it's a good game. I still think it's fun. I just don't think it's a masterpiece or anything. But going back to the question we asked at the top, does any of this actually matter? Like, it's the same exact thing that happened with Jedi Survivor. Do you guys remember that launch? Star Wars Jedi Survivor ran like trash. It relied on FSR upscalers to achieve even semi-decent like performance, but it was artifacted out the ever-living ass, and it just looked pretty bad when you were in motion and when you were especially playing on a larger TV. And it sucks because the game is really, really good. But you know what? They still sold millions of copies. So why would they feel the need to change it? You know, like, why would they need to make adjustments? Why would they need to listen to the feedback and delay the next game if you're still going to buy it? Like, it's the one thing about Ubisoft games. Ubisoft games, they rush them, they run poorly or look poor, and then nobody buys them. So they are forced next time to delay the game and polish it up so it runs better. That's how this is supposed to work. But with some games, I think maybe brand loyalty, look at that. Brand loyalty overcomes all of that critical thought to the point where it's like, no, I love Star Wars, I'm going to buy it regardless. Or I love Monster Hunter, I'm going to buy it regardless, even though it runs like ass. And that's what happened with Monster Hunter Wilds, is people still bought it. PS5 performance mode, 640p, 648p at times. 648p, upsampled to 1440, and it looks like it. It looks like it. Dude, it's madness. It's madness. But they got away with it with Jedi Survivor because people still bought it. And way more people even bought Monster Hunter Wilds despite it running poorly. And now, you know, they're coming around to it and being like, hey, after 200 hours, I've run out of content. You know what? I'm realizing now it's okay to be critical. And you know what? I'm upset about a lot of this. And it's good. I'm glad we're having the conversation now instead of never. But it is frustrating, I think, that we're only bringing this stuff up and talking about it as like a broader Monster Hunter fan base after they made hundreds of millions of dollars on it. Because I don't think frankly, I don't think they give a damn at this point. It's like, yeah, they rushed it out. It needed another 6 months or 9 months in the oven. Like, it needed more time, but they rushed it out and then they got rewarded for it. You know, it's why it's really crucial, I think, for everybody to kind of hold everybody's feet to the fire equally with this stuff so that it's just not tolerated. Because, you know, we've jokingly said there's things that some companies can get away with that others can't. Like, you know, a company can get away with putting out something that runs poorly so long as it's in a you know, big franchise or the core game is a certain way and, you know, the fan base is willing to tolerate it. And Call of Duty is probably the worst offender of this. Like, every year people hate the new Call of Duty release and they still sell 35 million copies. You know, I hate this. Here's my money. You know, it's so stupid, but it happens all the time with some of these big IP. But who knows? Maybe now, like, if they announce an expansion or something and people don't buy it, maybe that'll wake them up and they need to fix it. But yeah, or Madden's another one. But realistically, like, if they announce the expansion for Monster Hunter and it's like, hey, coming out next summer, here's the big expansion for Monster Hunter Wilds, and it's going to be $40 and it's going to be big and crazy, I think a lot of these people are still going to buy it anyways. You know, let's be perfectly honest. I don't think an expansion can fix it, though. I think an expansion can fix the content issues if they can add a ton of content. I think that can fix the content frustrations. It doesn't magically fix performance critiques and things, obviously. But clearly, a lot of people are willing to tolerate that. Like, some of these reviews that are complaining about the performance of the game, they're complaining about it, but they have 300 hours. So clearly it wasn't that big of a deal because they were able to play the game for 344 hours. With those performance issues. So if they like what they're playing, they're willing to put up with the bad performance demonstrably for a long time. You know, it's I think for a lot of these people, it's the content that's frustrating them. And, you know, they reached the end game and they found the end game dissatisfying, which is why they're moving back to World. But I think if they release an expansion, they'll come back because the content issue will be fixed. And just like they did for the first 300 hours, they'll tolerate the performance issues. You know, I think that's the way Capcom is going to deal with it, because they'll put that out. They'll get $40 a pop for it. And then, you know, performance will still probably be pretty bad, but they're just going to keep rolling with it. And people are going to give them even more money. And it's just going to be the same moving forward. You know, nothing will change till people start voting with their dollar. Well, yeah. And I mean, I think, again, the difficulty for them at this point is just that they already got everybody's money. They already did the thing. They already made millions upon millions upon millions upon millions of dollars. So even if people are throwing a fit now, they're like, yeah, you go for it. Downvote on Steam. Who cares? You already bought it, you know?